King Cam on Ujumbe's podcast, Ujumbe Me's message. And today's message is facial expression. Facial expressions. This is part 2 of our Black Man of the Nile series. Now, I apologize in advance for cutting this session short, but I had to attend a staff meeting and we had to deal with testing and protocol and things like that. So before we get into it, I want you guys to know I am a high school educator. I teach economics and government. So I'm also a history major, and I currently serve as the mentor, teacher, and department chair. So it is my desire to make this a impactful and wonderful experience. And the way I would teach this course or this session is very similar as to how I would do my regular classes, but you may not get a lot of homework. All right. So let's get into it. Okay, chapter 1 of the Black Man of the Nile and his family. Somebody's asking, what do you mean facial expression? Right? I'm not talking about your facial expression such as your smile or your frown, right? I'm using this term in order to express the main idea for chapter 1 of Dr. Ben's work, The Black Man of the Nile and his family. The intended title of the chapter actually is Who Were / Are the Africans? In this chapter, Dr. Ben is describing the phenotype or the phenotype of the people of ancient Kemet, which was African, right? In this chapter, of course, chapter 1, Dr. Ben initiates the conversation by stating that most Caucasian anthropologists and scientists would use one type or kind of facial expression or facial representation when it came to the people of Kemet, Tamari, or the Nile River Valley. Okay. All right. So the type that proves basically their so-called theory that the European or the Mediterranean race were that of the ancient Egyptians. However, they neglect the vast array of other examples and artifacts whose facial expressions were that of African descent. In this chapter, of course, chapter 1, as you're reading, Dr. Ben shows the fact that the people of Kemet were the original indigenous people of Africa. Very similar to when they say, like, Christopher Columbus discovered America, but the indigenous Native Americans was already there, So that kind of concept. For example, now Dr. Ben uses the famous Queen Nefertiti by mentioning that her face on the wall of the Temple of Karnak is totally different than the bust, the famous statue that's in the German museum. Okay, the one on the wall shows her African features, her facial expression and body. The issue that is so-called scholars would omit the major facts and details from the media or newspaper, no matter what the proof has displayed before them. Dr. Ben even goes further by observing that over the years, you will find that the racist views would show up. Like on one hand, they would be applauding their accomplishments, but on the other hand, they have a backhanded compliment by saying, by calling these people, the people of Kemet, primitive. Yeah. So if they if they isolate their accomplishments, they in their writings, they would certainly not mention the fact that the people of Africa or African people were Kemet or the Egyptians, right? So this is what he's talking about, chapter 1. He's talking about facial expressions, the phenotypes, but he would also move on into how they would describe the frame of King Akhenaten as abnormal. Yet in reality, Black people have thick lips and hips, and the reality is some men out there built like their mama. Okay, but turn around and call the Europeans' frame normal. This sort of abnormality, if you will, as you want to call it, that was normal among the Africans. Okay, and so he tried to he mentioned how the Europeans and many other scholars would make this an abnormal situation, and he was built wrong, or he was this or that. But But however, despite of the negative information and propaganda that's being poured out, there are some European scholars that weren't ashamed, as he mentioned in his book, that weren't ashamed to mention the fact that the people of Kemet were African. Okay. Of course, not all knowledge is good knowledge. However, it's good to use what you got. Right. Greek philosopher Herodotus, according to Dr. Ben, he was a man who lived during the time Kemet was at its turning point. Even when Greece and Rome came to Egypt, came to Kemet, they were on a decline. Okay. She was old and ancient at this time. I would illustrate to my students the fact that when King Tut was 18, 19 years old and saw the pyramids, they were ancient by the time he got there. That's mind-blowing, right? So the Greek philosopher Herodotus, a man that lived during the time of Kemet, he saw them firsthand and described them as Black. The man that actually lived during this time described them as Black. Sir E.A. Wallace Budge, the translator of the Book of Coming Forth by Day, or popularly known as the Book of the Dead, as well as many other works, mentioned this in his work many times, that these people were African, that these people were he was a Negro or whatever, but the people of Egypt was African. Unfortunately, on the flip side, some of our own people went along with the negative rhetoric of the Europeans. Men such as Professor J.C. DeGault Johnson, a premier scholar of his day, he was well respected, but he fell prey to the Eurocentric view of Kemet, proving that skinfolk ain't always kinfolk. He was going along with the negative talk, with the conversation that these people certainly cannot be Negro, right? But now, since we on that term Negro, the term Negro on page 33 was a term imposed by the Europeans. When a lot of the work that came out concerning Kemet after the Napoleon into the 1800s and 1900s and so on, they added the term Negro. Okay, this name was not used by Africans, according to Dr. Ben and many other Black scholars, like Professor Smalls and many others. This is not how they describe themselves. If we should use the people, if any source, we should use a primary source, right? We should use the people, the same people that describe. Let's use their stuff. Let's use their voice, right? So they call themselves the people of Kemet, Nubians, Tamnisi, Tamari, Anu, and so on. So as scholars and students, we should allow people to describe themselves as they are. Okay, we weren't there. Okay, but when we look at the walls and we look at the statues and look at all these things, yeah, they were Black, right? He even touches on the fact that Kemetic people came from the South. Let me show you a little bit of that. Came from the South. Okay, we'll get into that a little bit later on, but the thing is, he in chapter one, he mentions their facial expression. This is, of course, Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti. In the Temple of Karnak, this is Narmer, or the Scorpion King Menes, so it depends on who's describing him. Okay, this is, I know it's kind of dark, but it shows the prominent African features of his face. And the thing is, he, fun fact, he didn't originate from Kemet. He was from the South. He was from Nubia. And so, but also, the thing is, they would turn around and say, look at these people. They got thin lips and everything else. The reality is, right now, there are Black people that don't have big lips, right? They got thin lips, but they're still Black, right? And this is long before European involvement physically. So there was a rainbow, there was a wide array of people or colors in Africa before European involvement of different facial expression, different phenotypes, and so on. So that is chapter 1. Like I said, I got to do teacher stuff, right? I got to do things like that. But thank you guys for listening. Chapter 1 focuses on the facial expressions of the people of Kemet. As scholars and students, we should allow people to describe themselves as they are. Okay, they want to make themselves white, they would have made them white. They want to make themselves black, they would have did so, vice versa. This is when the true understanding of culture comes to bring us a brighter future. Okay. Once again, you're listening to King Cam or watching King Cam and Ujumbe podcast, Ujumbe Meets Message. And today's message is back to the basics, facial expression. You can like, comment, subscribe. I'm on YouTube, podcasting, everything. If you have any questions, comments, by all means, we can chop it up. But yeah, I encourage you, get this book. This is one of many. I have to make a correction. We're in the African history. We're number 11 for African history. Okay, not there's a platform period, but it's still.
This interruption, high school teachers, but students, please remember that we have snack lunches in the academy cafeteria. There will be no students exiting the building getting dinner. Dinner is provided. Remember, if you want to bring your own dinner, you must bring that to school with you so you do not have to exit the building. Also, students, remember, we do not leave until 7:30. No students should be allowed to leave the building until it is 7:30. Students, you have about about 2 minutes until the 5:15 break. So please make certain that you use the restroom, get a snack, and then return back to your classroom. Once again, no exiting the building, and we all will leave at 7:30. Then teachers and students will leave at 7:30. Teachers, please do not allow students to leave your class earlier than the appointed time. Thanks and have a great day.
Okay. Like I said, we are number 11 for African history. Eventually we'll rise to the top, but either way, I'm still happy that you guys are here, that you hang with me, and let's learn together. Let's thrive and grow together. Once again, you're listening to King Cam and Ujumbe podcast, and Ujumbe means message. Today's message is back to the basics, facial expression. Talk to you later.